Welcome to the West Boylston Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners meeting, March 20th, 2019. All members are present. First item on the agenda is public comment. Hearing none. Approval of minutes for March 6th.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor abstains.
And one abstain. Okay, next is review and vote to approve warrants.
Make a motion to approve the warrants covering the period March 7th, 2019 to March 20th, 2019, including the town payables warrant FY19, 37, and 38, payroll warrant FY19-18, municipal light plant 25 and 26, and number 18, and school FY19 S14.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Next item is review post-retirement benefit program. Are those folks here? Mr. Sherman? Okay, you can step right up.
Fully funded, right?
Yeah, we don't.
We got it covered.
Didn't we put 100 in already?
$100.
Good evening. Hopefully everybody received a copy of my reports. There are two, and what I'm going to do is focus on the one that does not have the box. The report that has the box is the accounting report. So it goes through issues regarding
The other one has a box.
No box yet.
You only got one? You got this one? Those are mine.
Got the right one.
That's not the right report.
So we get this one.
That one you want.
Okay.
Perfect.
Which one?
That's the one I'm going to spend the most time on.
Everybody.
Okay?
So what I ask you to do is to turn to page 3. This particular page is probably covers 80% of what's important, if not more than that. Everybody there?
No,
Oh, okay, this one.
I don't think so. I have it.
Is this one?
Yeah, you do. It's right underneath it.
Okay.
Okay, you're all set.
I should put a big red flower on mine, make it clear which one's which.
These are nicer. I don't know who this one is. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for the nice colored ones.
That sounds like a challenge.
So on page 3, what I've done here is laid out the most important numbers on your OPEB plan. And just to back up a second, show of hands, and please be honest, how many of you really know all about post-retirement medical benefits and the liability? One person. Okay. Good. I'm very happy for the honesty, because every now I've done dozens and dozens of these presentations, and I can tell right away when the eyes kind of glaze over and the person's like, I'm losing it. I would like to go in front, those that really understand the stuff versus those that are trying to learn. So I'll treat you guys as those that are trying to learn, which is 99% of my clients. This is complex stuff. I'll say it right up front. The whole idea of this, it started with the accounting rules of GASB 43 and 45. Is the Government Accounting Standards Board said, we want you to measure and recognize the liability, the promise you've made to all your employees and retirees for post-retirement medical, life insurance, dental, anything that is not pension that's paid out to employees after they retire. And the whole idea was to get upfront with the cost of this obligation. The rating agencies were trying to guess what the liabilities would be. So S&P or Moody's comes in and looks at your situation, say 10 years ago, they would said, well, we think you have this kind of liability for your OPEB promise. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But the Government Accounting Standards Board said, we want you to figure it out. So they promulgated 43 and 45 a number of years ago. That's been updated to now what's called 74 and 75. The whole idea is a measurement of the value of that promise. So on page 3, what I've done is given you 2 columns. And the reason I did 2 columns is you'll see at the top on the left-hand side, full pre-funding at 7.5% and no pre-funding at 4%. And what GASB said is you use a discount rate, which is what those 2 percentages represent. based on how well you're funding this obligation. Are you putting money aside in a trust? The Light Department has been. They've got almost $800,000, but last June, they had $800,000 in their trust, 779 to be exact, and they were funding it. So if you're funding the obligation, you get to use the discount rate based on the investments and those assets, you know, the expected return on those assets, which could be 7.5% if you have a decent, you know, asset allocation of say 70-30 or 75-25 between equity and fixed income. If you're not doing any pre-funding, you're just setting aside a few bucks, or none at all, then you have to use a discount rate that is tied to the long-term expectations on short-term money under 43 and 45, under 74. And 75, they said, well, no, you really got to tie it to 20-year bond rates. And 20-year bond rates is more like 375 based in 2018. If you're doing something in between, you're setting aside some money but not enough, you have to do a complex calculation and say, okay, what's the in-between value? So plans that are, say, half funding, it might be 6%, 6.25%. If you're putting a little bit of money in and you've got a little money set aside, like your light department, I'm able to say I can use 4% of the discount rate because there's a few bucks set aside, they're putting money set aside, and based on the formula, I can support a 4% discount rate. So that middle column, 4%, you'll see that, for example, the assets are both 779, but then the liability is much, much higher at $28 million at 4% versus $16.9 million at 7.5%. And it's really quite simple. The liability is based on discounting from a future, you know, payment to all the retirees, the value today. So the time value of money comes into play. So if you can invest and earn 7.5%, then you only need $16.9 million today to cover it. But if you can only get 4% on your money, you better come up with $28 million. And that's really straightforward in terms of that's, you know, what's going on here. So the more the investments can handle the cost, the lower your liability. So what I've done is shown, you know, the 16.9 million at 7.5%, 28.5 million at 4%. You subtract the assets, you get the unfunded. That's your mortgage, if you will. So you have, if you own a home, you know that you've got a mortgage, you've got real estate taxes, you've got current costs and so forth, but you have that mortgage to pay off over some period of years, 30 years, for example. You have a liability of either 16.1 million or 27.7 million, depending upon how you can invest those assets and what you can do with them. So the next line is the funded ratio, just looking at assets divided by liabilities, 4.6% using 7.5%, 2.7% at 4%. The next item is the annual covered payroll. The only reason this is in here is that so the readers of your financials can say, okay, if I have a liability of $16 million for West Boylston, is that a big number or a little number? If it's the city of Boston we're talking about, it's a tiny number. 16 million is nothing. So what the ADB said was, okay, divide the liability by your payroll and come up with a percentage, in this case 127 or 218. Now I can compare your financial statements and your disclosures on OPEB to the city of Boston, state of Ohio, where you know it becomes a measuring stick. That's important for readers of financials, auditors, and rating agencies together. I can tell you at 127%, you are a little bit on the low side compared to your peers. The average for most cities and towns that on a 7.5% basis is closer to 150%. So that helps you, as you know, comparatively. And 218 is on the low side as well, and both for the same reason. Your plan is not as rich as some other plans that are out there, so that's helped you out. Also, if you have fewer fire and police than your peers, that helps you out, because fire and police are more expensive than regular general employees, because they can get out early. And as you know, those pre-65 years are most expensive. You don't get the Medicare break that you do as post-65. So that makes them more expensive. So that percentage, 127 and 218, is important comparative basis. Line J is what we call, in actual way, it's called a normal cost. In a normal cost, think of that as just being the value of a one-year accrual per OPEB. So if all your active employees, they work 1 year, they're 1 year close to retirement, they're more likely to receive an OPEB benefit. If, a 25-year-old has probably less than 1% chance of actually retiring and getting OPEB benefit. But if they're 45 or 50, it's probably closer to 50% chance that they're actually going to get a benefit. And if they're 60, 65, it's probably 95% chance. So as that percentage increases, the value of their OPEB benefit increases, and the value of that we call the normal cost on a year-to-year basis. So for 7.5%, that's $482,000. As I mentioned, we have a liability unfunded of $16.1 million. So this is just a straight 30-year amortization with 3% increase in payments, so that's $934,000. I do this valuation as of June 30th. If I assume the payment's going to come in June 30th, there's no interest charge. So when you add it together, you get $1.4 million. So that's the amount of money that you would expect to put into an OPEB trust to cover your benefits and pay off your liability over the next 30 years. What you're already doing is a pay-go basis, and that's the final number of $1,040,000. And so the delta of roughly $400,000 considered as new money. We're already spending over $1 million for retirees today. We need to be at 1.4 million, $400,000 gap. So you think of that as your new money and where you ought to be if you're fully funding the obligation. Now, the 4% column really doesn't matter except for the accounting side and as a comparison. But it's important if you, for example, Light Department has got their $800,000 in the trust earning returns. If you got really conservative and said, we want, everything in T-bills, 20-year T-bills, and then you end up with this 4%, now you got to come up with a lot more money. So, you're coming up with millions more than you are, in this case, 28 million versus 16 million, because you don't do as well as on the investment side. But that 4% column compares to my report from 2 years ago. Some of you may have seen it, maybe not, but I used a 4% discount rate 2 years ago. So 1.4 versus $1 million is your delta. That's where you need to be. So turning a couple of pages, page 5 is a breakout. Actually, before I leave that page, is everybody good with that explanation so far?
I think what you guys need to take away from that is if we put $380,000 a year for 30 years, we would no longer have an unfunded liability,
Right.
assuming all of these rates.
Yeah, and I'll get to that forecast. I mean, that's just for 2018, but yeah.
It's got to be increased for inflation and all of that, but yeah, in today's dollars, yes.
Exactly. So page 5 is a breakout between light and town. And you can see that I put all the assets in the light department. And then it came up with values for them. And at the bottom, just the light department, they have a normal cost amortization and roughly $30,000 is what they want to need to put aside in total. The town is 1.386 million. So you can see the split between those two. And then the other two pages that are important is page 7 and 8. Page 7 is what I'm calling a conventional schedule. And here what I'm showing is, in total, is the $481,000 normal cost, amortization 2,917, total 1.4 million. Pay-go is $1 million, and the difference is roughly $391,000. So that's a conventional schedule in the sense that the amortization goes up 3% a year for 30 years. And you can see in the year 2048 that you reach full funding, you burn the mortgage, and the only thing you have to pay is the normal cost, and at that point it's $1.8 million. The next to last column is a pay-go, and you can see how that tracks going up. And then the difference is what I would call a new money. So initially it's about $391,000, and then it goes up with inflation, basically the difference between those two columns. And it caps out at $2 million in 2047. at which point you just do the normal cost. And all the benefits that are being paid to Blue Cross Blue Shield, Tufts, wherever, are paid out of the trust. So between now and then, that changeover would occur. It's like pension. If you're familiar with the Worcester your regional system, all the money goes into the trust, and the trust pays benefits. Right now, you would have got a bifurcated system where you're paying the benefits to retirees out of your general account, and you have a line item for that. And then you got a separate line item for money that goes into the OPEB trust, so at least the light department does, that's separate. That should be a single number, and all the money goes in the trust, and then the trust takes payments. We have no money in the trust right now, so it's gonna be a few years before that happens, but that's the goal, that's best practice, is to turn this into like pension. So that's what I call a conventional schedule. Page 8 is something I put in, Leslie gave me a little guidance and thought, and said, Dan, can you come up with a schedule that has us putting in, initially it's $50,000, increasing it $75,000 a year, and then what happens at the end. So now I'm working a little backwards. I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna have, I know the pay-go column. I know that what she gave me is an idea here in terms of special. So you got 50, 125,000, 200,000, and so forth. And then I work backwards to see, okay, what's my recommended contribution, and what's the amortization, and when do I reach full funding? So it just turned everything around backwards, but we have computer systems, and you can do this. So what this shows is that in the year 2044, roughly 2045, you reach full funded status, which I think is a couple of years earlier than the previous page. Yeah, this one has you 2047, you have to cap out near 2045, so 2 years earlier. So this is a kind of schedule that you could do. There are no rules regarding funding this obligation and how you fund it. Unlike Chapter 32 of pension, where there's a prescribed set of rules and what Worcester Regional has to do, they don't have those rules for OPEB. And I've had the question many times is, could that happen? When will the state make us put money aside in OPEB? And my response has always been, until the state starts funding it, they can't impose it on locals. Because the state hasn't put any money into the OPEB trust since they got $500 million on the tobacco settlement, which was a long time ago, 10 plus years ago. So the state hasn't funded it, so it's going to be hard for them to impose it on the locals. So you really have free reign as to how you set this up and put money aside. But putting the money aside and funding this thing helps you, and of course you don't have this report, but this is the accounting report. And the more you can set aside, and the more you put into this trust and build it up, the lower costs you're going to have long term. You're going to have a reserve that you can tap in hard times. You can use a higher discount rate, so your financial statements look a lot better. So when you think about this, if you've got projects coming up, and Leslie cued me in that you've got S&P coming out here in a few months to look over your financials, to look at what you're doing, I can tell you from my own experience that the rating agencies look very favorably on communities that are funding their OPEB obligation. And one of those communities I'm intimately familiar with is the town of Wakefield. I'm a chairman of the finance committee. I've been on the finance committee for 12, 14 years. I lose track. My second stint as chairman, they didn't think I did a good enough job, so it's included him. But I've been pushing the OPEB, and we got a trust built up. We got 14 million, and our rating agencies came in and looked at us a few years ago, and they looked at the OPEB trust. We got 14 million in it. At that point, we had about 5 or 6. And looking at that and everything else, they said, we'll move you up to AAA. So they look at this stuff. They talk about this stuff. So if you think about going out for a bond, what you can do is if you set up this OPEB trust and put some money in it, you're really paying yourself, right? This is your money you can use down the road for making payments to retirees. If you can move your rating from, say, AA to AAA, now you're paying less in interest going to Wall Street, right? right? So that's money you have no control. You're losing interest because your rating isn't quite as good as somebody else's. So you have a choice. If you have the assets, and you have the money, and you put it in the OPEB trust, you're paying yourself, and you're saving money going to Wall Street. Think about that. The other big advantage is if you get, some of you remember, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, when Blue Cross Blue Shield and Tufts and the rest of them raised your medical premiums like 15%. Any of you remember those days? Okay. What did it do to your budget? Right? Killed it. Messed you up big time. If you have an OPEB trust, when and if this ever happens again, the trust can pay the extra 10% that you weren't expecting on retirees, right? It'll take the hit, not your budget for retirees, and you can replenish the OPEB trust over time. So instead of getting whacked in 1 year, you can use this as a reserve to mitigate the impact and smooth it out, so your budget in that year that you get whacked with a 15% increase doesn't actually kill your budget. Doesn't help you with the active group, but it does help you with retirees, and retirees are a big nut here, a big cost for you. So think about that as a highly advantageous approach to putting money aside. You're paying yourself from the rainy day fund, and God forbid we have 15% increase in healthcare costs, it won't kill you. The rest of my report is assumptions, boilerplate type stuff, and I will stop and entertain any questions that you might have about my lower.
So, if you put money in the OPEC every, for $75,000, this board's gone, and 5 years later, they can only use that for retirement. You can't use it for anything else, correct? They couldn't use it to fund the street or something like that. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, well, that is the case. But as I said, in terms of reserve, what you can do is, okay, let's assume, you got this, $1.5 million is your OPEB, is what you were putting in, some point down the road, you just put $1.5 million in. And suddenly you get a bad year, for any reason. Now you gotta mess with your budget, right? You get sued for something, you have to come up with $1 million. So what you can do is, if you got a few $1 million in the OPEB trust, and you say, well, we gotta spend, $1.3 million on retirees. So we'll use the OPEB trust and say only put $1 million aside in your budget, grab $300,000 from the OPEB trust to make that payment. That frees $300,000 for your crisis, whatever it might happen to be. So you can use that money, but it can't be direct. So you can't pull $300,000 and put it in roads. But if you want to increase your road budget for a particular year, if you have assets available, you can draw down some of those assets, take care of the roads, and then replace it over time in the OPEB trust. So it acts like a reserve. Really think about it like a stabilization fund, because it does act in that way.
What do you have for questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
He's got this.
He's got it all in. So what should we do then?
Well, you asked me what's the prudent thing to do is to fund your OPEB liability. Where are you gonna come up with $400,000 a year?
Money, right.
So that's why I had that special schedule. This allows you to build it up. And I use the town of Needham as a poster child for how to do it. So what Needham did, this is a long time ago, it's probably 15 years ago, I first measured them before the ASB 43 and 45, they didn't come out. They were very aggressive on this. And so you got a $2 million gap at that time. Yours is $400,000, theirs is $2 million. And they attacked it this way. They said, we're gonna attack the liability side and the asset side. So they negotiated some changes with the unions over the amount of benefits, the co-pay, the co-shares, and so forth. And then they went to town meeting and asked for $300,000 actually to set up the OPEB trust. The following year, they came back and asked for $400,000, then $500,000, and $600,000. It took 10 years. They closed the gap. So they're fully pre-funding their obligation. It took 10 years to get there, but they are. Wakefield, we did much the same thing. It didn't take quite as long because we made some significant changes by getting off of the Maya plan and on the GIC. Saved us a bunch of money, and we funded about $500,000 for a couple of years. then we jumped to $1 million, then we jumped to $1.8 million, and now this year, for 2020, we're doing $1.85 million in the trust. We'll be fully funded in about 15 years at this rate. So lots of communities are taking different approaches to this. I outlined 2 approaches that Needham and Wakefield did. Another approach, and I've got many of my clients are doing, is saying they're putting a few bucks in like you are, and then when the pension becomes fully funded, we're taking that savings, which is going to be a large savings, and devoting some or all of it to OPEB. Shrewsbury, your neighbors, is doing exactly, I don't know if you guys know Mary Thompson or Dan Magato, who used to be there. They've been pushing 2022 or bust on pension. They were going to get fully funded by 2022, and then most, if not all, the savings in 2023, because if they drop, burn the mortgage, pension mortgage is burned, all the savings is going to OPEB. Town of Watertown is doing the same thing. They have about a $5 million reduction because they just reached full funded status on pension. $4 million of that's going into OPEB, and $1 million is going into the school project. They'll be fully funded on OPEB probably 20, 22 years. So I'm not sure when Worcester Regional is expected to be fully funded. I haven't looked at their schedule recently. I'm guessing it's probably like 2035 or something like that. So this schedule does not have any adjustment in, say, year, let's assume for argument's sake, 2035 is when Worcester Regional becomes fully funded. In 2036, you could, this has 1.4 million going into a special schedule, you could probably put 2.4 million. So I imagine you're spending a lot of money at Worcester Regional right now, very large. Who knows the budget for Worcester Regional? FinCom members, who doesn't know?
It's a little bit over $1 million, right?
Is it over $1 million?
Yeah.
So by the time 2035 arises, it's probably going to be close to $2 million, just because there's inflation involved. Your normal cost is probably going to be a few $100,000. You probably save $1.5 million in 2036, if that's the magic year. Then you could put a lot of extra money into OPEB. So that's a very common strategy, is to fully fund pensions as quickly as possible. Take that savings, don't put it in operations, put it into capital, and OPEB. That's where it's going.
1.3 million is what our Worcester Regional
So
says.
Worcester is 1.3? Yeah, so by the time 2035 arrives, it'll be well over $2 million, probably $2.5 million. It'll be up there.
Even for the next board in 2035.
They can hear that. I like that idea.
Does anybody from the, do you have any questions?
No, I just have one question, Dave. What's our flexibility if we started at, say, a lower dollar amount? Can we increase it, step it up, and then can we step back if we have?
Absolutely, and that's what I'm talking about, is that once you stepped it up and you had a bad day, right, something goes wrong, then clearly you can step it, back. You want to do it like a temporary basis.
Yeah.
And the other thing to remember is that these valuations have to be done every other year. So there's always a reset. And so if you had a good period where you made some plan changes, or, the investments do really well, you may have to push it back a little bit, or shorten the amortization period. You say, geez, we're going to be fully funded in 2047, but new numbers that come out, it's going to be 2045. Because things like that can happen. So, you're resetting every couple of years. You have to measure this at least every 2 years.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a question referencing something, John, that you had said. You were talking about putting $75,000 a year into this. You're talking about increasing it by $75,000 a year, or are you talking just $75,000 a year?
My page 8 is increasing 75,000.
Right, which is not what John had said. I just wanted to be clear on that we're talking the same thing.
Increasing.
Increasing
Yes,
each year, okay.
So if we went in that route, in 2024, we'd have to put 500,000 in to keep on this track.
2020, yeah, above and beyond the expected pay go. You remember that pay go column is just taking all your current actives, retirees, probability of termination, retirements, deaths, mortality, everything is in, this is a forecast. It's not set in stone. It'll be updated. It's my best guess as to what the numbers would be. So you're already committed to that pay go column. And you really don't have any choice for that. That's what you're gonna be spending one way or the other, unless you change the plan. If you change the plan, you'll go to cheaper plans, or the people elected cheaper plans, or you change the co-shares. You know, you can affect that column through plan design. So the last column is like, okay, what are we gonna put above and beyond what we're already committed to?
It's already in our budget. We already have that pay-as-you-go in our budget.
Mhm.
So one last question. Have you had any experience with towns that have experienced, bond rating impacts as a result of either A, being funded, partially funded, or not funded?
Yeah, I mentioned Wakefield is the one that's one I'm obviously most familiar with. And I don't know, maybe you've got some others.
Pretty much, we do about 28 AAA clients, and I would say every one of them has a significant portion of OPEB funded.
Okay. And then those that maybe don't have a significant, I guess, what's the impact on that rating? It's probably
I think what
varies.
Dan said was good, is like, some are, say, very well funded, some are middle funded, and
Yeah.
some are none or less. The middle funded are probably all double A's.
Double it, so that's the difference.
Because what S&P and Moody's says is what's your plan, and that you have an action plan that you're actually following related to that plan.
Mhm.
And if they see that happening, they're gonna begin looking favorably at you, or at least have an advantageous outlook the next time they come in, something like that.
And they won't commit to actually telling you why you went from a double A to triple A. They'll give you a whole list of factors they look at. They're very wishy-washy in terms of that, right? They won't tell you exactly, why they moved you either up or down. But they'll say, well, here are the list of factors we looked at, and all these things point to, better management, the OPEB, the pension, other debt. I mean, they look at everything.
Yeah, the money,
But it's clear that if
That's
they
what
ask
it is.
about OPEB, and it matters to
they
them.
did.
Next.
Chris,
Any other questions? Go ahead.
have you worked with any towns that are about the same size as us? You mentioned some other towns, but
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
really our
I've got
size.
towns that are much smaller than you.
that are contributing?
I think, I do put it this way. I do a lot of presentations to like the MMAAA over here in Amherst, a meeting in March. And I've done a bunch with the finance committee, annual meetings. And I always ask for a show, whenever I'm up there, I ask for a show of hands. Well, like 15 years ago, I asked the question, how many people are out there actually putting aside money for the OPEB? And unless Needham was in the audience, no hands went up. They were the only ones. Wellesley, Arlington, and a few others got on board about 12, 14 years ago. So, and then each time I do these, I've done a lot of them, I'd ask for a show of hands. A year ago, I was out the MMAAA in Amherst at the U, and I asked the same questions. How many people out here are putting some money aside in OPEB? At least 95% of the hands went up. Virtually everybody out there is doing something, and I'm sure many of them are towns your size and smaller. I then asked the question, how many are fully funding the obligation versus just putting in, $50,000 or $100,000? And I'd say probably a third of the hands went up, a quarter maybe, that said, well, we think we're fully funding. I'm not sure they really are, but there are a number that actually are fully funding the obligation. But certainly, everybody is doing something, even like the water towns and Shrewsbury's, who are geared to when pension's fully funded, then they're gonna shift all the extra money, to OPEB. Even those entities are putting some money aside in OPEB and have some money set aside. I don't remember how much Mary's got, I think it's like over $1 million, just based on the last several years, and just putting something away to get things moving, get town meeting used to seeing that as a line item on the budget and saying this is what we're doing on OPEB. So certainly a majority of communities across the state and regional schools are putting money aside right now. You guys are actually an outlier. Almost all my clients have money set aside at the town level. I mean, light departments have been doing it, sewer and water have been doing it, that's pretty common. But for towns, most of mine are putting money aside.
So how much do we have in this year's budget for this?
the plan is to put something at town meeting in an article.
So we don't have any number yet.
Well, we'd like to go with 75 if possible.
So that would be an
And
increase.
just-
I'd like to go with 100 if possible.
Last year we did 50, last year we did
For free
50.
cash.
Free cash.
We did 50 last year?
We did
Nothing.
nothing.
Nothing last
We
year.
had
Well, I'd say
fun getting-
2018 was 50.
It's this year, so
No,
No.
this is just that's
Projections.
just a projection
I
of
thought
how
we
you
put
get there.
something in it.
No, you established the trust.
You did something.
So
Yes, you did.
It was pretty cheap.
We've been sitting on that established trust for like the past 8 years since this came in and telling S&P and Moody's, we're thinking about it, we're looking at it, as soon as we get money, we're gonna do this, and now it's kind of like, okay, people are doing this, we really need to just step up and do this. And this year, our free cash hasn't been tapped yet prior to going into the May town meeting. And at this point, there aren't a lot of demands on our free cash right now, so we are perfectly positioned this year to take this step, and it just happens to coincide June 30th before our July S&P rating, bond rating for our senior center bonding. So the one position I don't want to see us in, I think, Bonnie, are we at AA++ or? AA++. The one thing I would hate to see happen to us is that we go down because of this factor. I don't know if we'll be able to get better based on our size and our revenues and such, but I certainly don't want to see us drop. That would not be a great thing. So I feel that it's an inevitability, that we can only kick that can for so far and ignore this for so long, that we really are in an ideal position right now to take advantage of this and to get going.
So are we planning on trying to set money aside every year from now? Is that
Yes.
what we're hoping to do?
Yeah.
We need to look at our
We made-
feasibility
yeah.
each year and try to act on that. It needs to become priority.
And our financial advisor has been recommending it for quite a few years, and it can make a difference in your bond rating. It's very important. It's been going on for quite a while. That's why it's set up in a separate account, which, there's different firms out there that have the knowledge to be able to do this. It has to be done.
And once we start, we're committed, right? You
Not
can't-
necessarily.
You know, you're not.
You're not, right, until the state passes a law,
Okay.
Right.
you're not committed, but the downside is that if
You start, stop.
if you start and stop and you take a couple years off, Powers and Sullivan and I are gonna look at this and say, well, wait a minute, I can't keep using a 7.5% discount rate because you guys are backing up, and then next time you have a bond rating and the S&P or Moody's or whoever comes in, looks at it and says, wait a minute, your history's not so good here, it could hurt you.
One other thing too, when we financed the town hall, they were just happy when we did our, we'd have our disclosure every year, just saying, we are considering funding and starting the account. That was good enough. That's not good enough anymore.
No, not anymore.
Doesn't go on everybody's sheet now, on the bottom, what you funded, your OPED? Doesn't on the balance sheet?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's something fairly new, isn't it? That wasn't
Yeah.
always like that.
Yeah, my old report from 2 years ago showed a liability based on what the difference is between what you should have put in and what you did. So it has a small liability showed on your balance sheet. The new GASB 74 and 75 says the entire unfunded liability now goes on your balance sheet. And so, and that is $28 million. Because I'm using a 4% discount rate. So, so now your balance sheet doesn't look so hot because of the low discount rate, because you're not funding it.
Any other questions? No? Okay. We know what we need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just put that check in the mail.
Win the lottery?
I got my ticket. Yeah, I will find it.
Mr. Sullivan, yes.
I gotta give Dan some kudos that, it's a very complicated thing that he made pretty simple for me to understand, so I appreciate listening to it. First of all, thanks for having me here tonight. I'm here to just give you a rundown of how the 2018 audit went. The way I like to do it is to basically talk about some of the key elements of the financial statements, just give you a feel for what we do and how we do it. Talk about some elements of the financial statements you should be aware of. Touch base on GASB 75, and then we'll pretty much roll into the management budget. When we do the audit, we break it out into two sections, two timings. One is the preliminary work that we do, which this year was the week of May 29th. And then after the books are closed, we get the ledgers and files, get into our financial software, our audit software. We come out in October 1st of this year, and spent a week out here. The preliminary work is important because you don't want to have all the work done at year end. It's just too much work to get done. And the preliminary work focuses on things that don't really rely on June 30th. Meaning like cash is reconciled as of June 30th. Receivables are reconciled as of June 30th. Most of the time, we know the budget's already been well done, so we audit that. If there's a single audit, we do it. If there's just a roll forward of OPEB and the actuary's been able to give us information, we can do what OPEB. Most of the time, bonds have already been issued, so we can audit the bands or bonds at the time. And then you have a small amount of capital leases. We try to get all that done in the spring. It's about 3 to 4 days worth of work. Then at year end, I call it walking down the balance sheet. We have cash, receivables, your capital assets, because we usually don't know what those are until after year end. Then you have big payables, your bonds, your notes, compensated absence of warrants payable. One thing about warrants payable is that we do what's called cutoff testing. That is, we look at expenditures subsequent to year end to see if they should be brought back into the fiscal year. So that takes about a day to get done. What do we audit? And I just thought I'd give you a sample. You guys have your financial statements, you know how much you have it. The biggest thing we audit is cash. We have $20.5 million worth of cash at year end. Receivables is another $4.3 million, and then capital assets, which is $50 million. That we get depreciation schedules and asset schedules from Leslie. They get us through that, but we focus on it. And then if there's any cleanup that needs to be done, the major liability items, which are again those payable, bonds payable, and then of course your OPEB liability, which Dan says was 28 million, 27.7. And then there's a pension liability, which is your share of the Worcester County retirement system. We also, in the preliminary phase, do transaction testing. Your internal controls are designed a certain way, and the designs have basically have good checks and balances. We understand the design, and then we design testing to determine if the procedures to support the design are in fact good. So we look at expenditures, we look at payroll, we look at revenue, and we also look at journal entries. We found no issues with them. We test between 25 and 50 in a sample, depending on how things go. One thing I'll tell you about journal entries, and you usually look at them. If there is a defect in the internal control and design of it, there's a lot of correcting journal entries that usually have to be made to get an account correct. So that's why we look at them. That's why we actually have to look at them. Never found an issue with that at all. The journal entries here, some things have to be journalized, just the way the system works. But we didn't find any exceptions as to, oh, we have to correct this balance to get this thing right. So from a transaction testing standpoint, we saw everything to be good. One note, there's a significant portion of the financial statements includes the electric light department. We do not audit that. We take those numbers from another auditor's report, according to proprietary statements. No adjustments, no nothing, because we're just taking their numbers. So we actually, from an ownership standpoint, we own the whole report, but a portion of that, and make note of it in our audit opinion, is information from another auditor who we have relied on. And we get an independence letter from them, same thing, we rely on them.
Was that report clean except for the same qualifications you had because of the 30-month issue?
No, this year was not the 30-month issue, last year was. 17 was. That 30-month issue was not an issue. We don't think we had a modified opinion this year. If we did, then we had it this year. I'm getting the years mixed up.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, it's back. Yep.
So was the MLP's audit clean except for that same issue?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is an issue that's affecting all the...
It's nothing we do about it. I get it.
Yep. We're trying to get the GASB to work on it, and it's just the way the measurement dates work. And because they're a 12/31 year end, it's very difficult for them to... Basically, every other year, your opinion will be modified because of it, as it stands right now. A little thing, give us some perspective. One of the things as an auditor we like to have, at least I like to have, and I hope my clients do that, is that we come in and they're ready for us. There's so many times we can come in and we haven't got the trial balance yet, or cash hasn't been fully reconciled. We come in October, which is really quick after year end, and there's a nice pile of papers waiting for us. Both Leslie and Bonnie do a really good job of getting us the information we need so that I can start dishing out the work the minute we walk into the room. It doesn't get better than that for us. We're kind of like the Marines, you get in, you get out, there's no blood. And this, by them doing this, it allows us to do our job, what I consider to be an efficient manner. I call it audit readiness. And I like the fact that I also have a sense of urgency. There are certain things that we have to do on every audit. And then there's an idea of what's called professional skepticism, where we try to do something a little different every year to see how they react. And usually it's a record request or talk about a procedure. And we measure their responses, like how fast they were able to get the information, how quickly they were on top of it just from a knowledge standpoint, and they pass those tests very well. Just to finalize this one piece here, we issued our drafts November 19th. Leslie goes through them very well. I mean, she was on this kind of side of the desk at one time, so it's really good. I can tell you that we used to spend about 2 hours on the phone, making sure she understands everything that's in there. It enhances the quality of the report. And that's what you want to have your town accountant do. And finals were issued in December 18th of this year. The results. I kind of focus on the budget, and I want to talk about how you guys did, because all the other stuff, it's important, but it's GAAP and GASB. And some of that stuff is not the kind of things that you want to pay attention to, so I focus on the budget. The budget is on page 66 and 67 of that report if you're interested. And what it does is it shows, here's what you thought you were going to collect, here's what you actually collected. Here's what you appropriated to spend, here's what you actually appropriated. And budgetarily, you actually did better than you anticipated. You had a small profit of $285,000. If I'm thinking of the report, that's probably like the third column from the right down the bottom. Your revenues came in slightly higher, mostly due to state monies and the motor vehicle excise. Expenses were about 4.2%, came in under 4.2% of budget, which is pretty consistent with what I've seen in the past. The real good thing about this is you expected to use $451,000 of free cash to balance the budget. By having a surplus, you use no free cash, and that's a positive. Pretty much all the other operations, not general fund related, were consistent with the prior year. In fund balance, we have 3 components of fund balance. That's probably on page 16 maybe, if you want to look at it. There's unassigned fund balance, there's assigned fund balance, there's committed fund balance. And the elements of those components are just based on whether it's an encumbrance or whether it's not, or whether you guys are going to spend the money. Your total fund balance, unassigned fund balance was $3.4 million. That's 14.5% of total expenditures, which is considered to be an excellent ratio. In there is 2 staff funds for $1.3 million and $652,000, because that's what the accounting says we have to do. But still, 14.5% is good. So let's back up the stabs, and then we call it what they call it, UMIS calls, on unreserved fund balance. Unreserved fund balance would be $1.5 million, or 6.1% of expenditures, which is still a healthy amount. The GFOA, which stands for Government Financial Office Association, likes to see a fund balance of 5% higher, so you're 1% higher than that. The receivables, very small amount of receivable a year, only $190K. But the important thing I look at in terms of trending is what percentage are your receivables of your commitment? That $190,000 only represented 1.13% of your total commitment, which means you collected 98.87% of what you set to bill for in the current year, which is excellent by any standard. Capital asset activity, a total of $3.9 million was spent. You finish off the police station, you started the senior center, Chapter 90, which gets the money, this money that comes from the state that helps repair your roads, came in, and you bought some buses and vehicles for $155,000. There were no additions in the sewer enterprise fund. On debt, the town issued $5.5 million in fiscal 18. That was for the town hall and the police station. You also issued $1.1 million in bonds, which I'm pretty sure went for the senior center. Your debt service as a percent of budget, which is something people look at, is pretty low, it's under 2%. It's gonna go to 2.5% in 2019 and further, but it's extremely manageable. And sometimes I think debt service, if it's that low, I might chastise a client for being too low, but I think you're doing a pretty good job with your CIP and in terms of making the improvements that need to be made. So I don't really have a problem with these numbers being at lower percentage. The new thing, Dan did an excellent job with it for this year. What I'd like to know is what's in this report that wasn't in the 17 report? And that's GASB 75. GASB 75 basically said, they're throwing out 45, which we use to measure the liability as the difference between what you should have put in and what you actually put in, or as Dan called it, pay as you go. And what you didn't put in extra, or the pre-funding, became a liability. And it was accumulating since GASB 45 was implemented. They took that liability off the books and said, we're going with total liability. And that liability was $27.7 million on June 30th this year. And that compares to $12 million reported in your FY17 report. So 45 had 12 million, GASB 75 has 26.8 million. Another thing that these GASBs did is you've got a pretty hefty size report because of the electric light, but it's 85 pages in this report. 19 pages devoted to OPEB disclosures, which includes the notes and the RSI. And it gets a little hairy because the electric light plant has to use GASB 45 right now. They didn't have to use 74 or 75 until next year. So overall, we propose no adjustments that would be required to be made to the books. That's important for you because you're a board that has to rely on the information coming from Leslie's office and Lonnie's office on a contemporaneous basis. You just can't look at the year end and not know during the year what's going on. And we propose no adjustments. All your assets, liabilities, revenues, we make sure they're properly disclosed in the act. The opinion was clean, unqualified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. And we don't have any issues related to internal controls to report to you. And finally, again, I want to say we had really good cooperation with the staff. I like the fact that the report was turned around fast because these things tend to sit on my desk and they get mold on them. You don't want that. It was a good audit overall. There's one little report, there's 2 pages. It relates to what they call the Yellow Book report. These audits have to be done under government auditing standards. Basically, this report says it was done under government auditing standards. There is no federal awards report for you because the town received and spent less than $750,000, and that's the threshold for having what they call a major grant that we would audit separately. So there's no need for that. The management letter, there's good news to report here too. We have 2 essentially informational comments. The first one is when they put in the uniform guidance, that threw out what was called A133 audits. The uniform guidance, among other things they did in terms of consolidation, strongly recommended that the documentation of how federal awards are processed in the town be developed, and also be developed on what they call COSO standards. This is probably a document that the school would be more responsible for than anybody else because they have most of the grants. And I haven't seen anybody get dinged or lose any money because they don't have it, but it is part of the guidance, and it's something that you should have, because I'm going to suggest to you that programmatically you have very good internal controls over your federal awards, but those things have to be documented. And finally, this is a kind of an informational comment. It's we've seen a lot of our clients get cyber attacked, and a lot of Bitcoin payments made by my individual clients, but clients of our firm. And we're basically saying, take a look at it, assess the risk, and make sure you're where you want to be. And if you're not, determine a way to get there, because it's happening a lot. At least we've been seeing it happen a lot. That's my report to you.
Any questions?
I just, 2 questions. On the awards COSO thing, is that something we're doing? Really a question for Leslie and Maureen.
As Rich said, it's at this point at the school level, and Rich, I believe Roger did come through and do the documentation. Were you able to remove that finding from 17?
It wasn't even a finding. This is just a continued update. This was a 17 finding and has a continued recommendation.
I thought the COSO was a 17 finding and then an 18
Did
that was
he, I
responsive.
don't think he had it done by the time we finished the audit.
It's possible he did.
It's in the works.
It's in the works.
Okay. And then, are we doing anything with CM Geeks or anybody as far as a cybersecurity plan?
They are aware, and we have a working group. We had training, they came in from the state, everyone, we sat down and had training. We have working groups, we're going around developing policies. And this year Maya gave cyber liability coverage free to all of their clients.
That's all I have.
Do we take Bitcoin?
The people who got hit by these did pay in Bitcoin. And I mean, I can tell you, I can't tell you who they were, but I mean, I think of my 3 clients right now.
But we
One
don't-
client got hit twice.
But we don't do that, do we?
What?
Take it?
No.
So you gotta buy it and give it to the people
No,
that...
I know that, yeah.
Did they have accounts already set up in case?
No.
Or did they
had
react
go through the
to-
process. I mean, basically, they
Because that
guys
can
that
take
can't
a
pay
while.
for you, I had to do that.
Right,
You know?
okay.
That's how it worked.
I could speak from experience. Last May, I was hit, they got through all my firewalls, all my protections. They encrypted everything I had. They demanded Bitcoin. My IT guy said, don't pay it because there's no guarantee you'll get your data back.
Right.
And I said, great, now what? He says, well, you got backup. And I had backup.
No.
So I got lucky, very, very lucky. But let me tell you, for about 24 hours, I was in a very, very bad place. It's the worst feeling in the world to find out you cannot access anything on your systems.
One of my clients lost a month's worth of work.
Wow.
Well, so what?
A month's worth of work.
Well, that's just craziness for not having a backup.
Keeps
Yeah.
tabs of
They
it.
thought,
Yes.
they thought they did.
Every,
What's that?
Every night.
Every night?
Yeah.
And they will attack the backup if they can find it.
Yeah. My firm, we just went to the cloud. One of the reasons we went to the cloud is I'm concerned about our security of our data.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
I'd like to thank Leslie and Bonnie for the job that they do. We get the same report and the same feedback every year. Great job.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, you get Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'll be right back. It's gonna take a few minutes.
Next item is Flag RV, are they coming here?
I thought they were coming. Look, I can explain this to you. They apparently went to renew their dealer's plates, and when they went to the registry, the name on the paperwork said Flag RV Center, and apparently it's always said Flag RV Center. Their license just says Flag RV. And they said that all the paperwork needed to match. It didn't match. And it's really nothing, they're not doing any different operations. It's just to get that paperwork straightened out so they can renew their dealer's license plates.
I'll make a motion to approve the change.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, any other discussion?
So this is center means, for me, there are 2 things are there. One is just a name, center. The other one is, they have a couple of businesses. Are they calling it business center?
No, it's called Flag RV Center, and the registry has always had it Flag RV Center. Their license just said Flag RV, so we need to make sure.
The thing is, if someone has a businesses, 2 or 3 businesses, it's called business center.
That's like more of a,
Like the one in
like
here.
Wachusett Plaza.
Wachusett
That's what that is, but this would be, this is just the name of a company.
That's my understanding. There are no changes, they haven't made any changes.
Right.
And it's just so that they can renew their dealer plates.
We have a motion and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Senior Center update. Moving forward.
We are moving forward, we are completed substantially, and we are hopefully going to be occupying it very soon.
Okay, invoices, RAC Builders payment number 11 for $83,950.
So moved.
Want to hear a second?
I wasn't there.
Second,
Okay. Now I hear a motion in a
just
second.
waiting for you.
Any other discussion?
We don't want to pay the bills.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting when this was discussed.
was, yeah, abstain too.
I mean,
I
we're just paying it after.
I understand.
we vote on it.
Yeah.
Next is change order number 7 for $2,642.
So moved.
Second,
A motion and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Interim town administrators, budget presentation.
Okay.
I know, I thought that's what they were here for.
Yeah,
No, they were here for the OPEB thing.
No,
We're
they-
here for OPEB.
but he said the budget too, did they leave?
no, they're having another meeting.
Okay,
They get their own.
I asked first if they were still here for that. That's fine.
Budget we can answer easy enough. OPEB gets a little trickier, so I wanted them here with the experts to pose the questions. And that's-
okay, we can start with the revenue budget. We have the levy limit, and I gotta tell you that lighting here is awful. So we have,
Nancy, you want to move here? It's brighter.
sure,
That's the hot seat. Oh, you can on papers.
yes. Leslie,
Yes.
you wanna sit up there and read these? Okay, it's 17, 17,
Do I have a choice? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
17,5,
Certainly.
21?
The levy limit from FY19, you can look, we have the revenue budget sheet that's this double-sided wonder here, so that you can follow us along. Do you see that in the packets, Nancy?
yep, they have it, they have hard copies.
So as you know, based on our Proposition 2.5 requirements, we start our FY20 budget with the FY19 tax levy limit of 17,321,101. And on that, we have the 2.5% increase, which comes out to the 433,028. At this time, our new growth is estimated by the assessor at this early stage. We go conservative, because if we spend it and don't get it, we're in trouble. So we go conservative. Conservatively, she's estimating new growth to be about 150,000 in 2020. We then take from that our allowance for abatements, our overlay. We take that right out off the top because we have to meet that expenditure. And at this time, 95,000 should take care of, we have to have at least a 5-year, what our 5-year average in overlay expenditures was. The state likes to see that amount provided for. With the Municipal Modernization Act, they changed how we do overlay a bit in that they pooled everything. So last year, if you recall, when we were doing the recap, we ended up only funding overlay at like 35,000, but we were able to draw down from the pool because there was definitely sufficient monies in the overlay pool to cover that lesser amount from what the 5-year average is. So going into this budget cycle, taking out 95,000 for overlay for FY 2020, which should cover us just fine, giving us the estimated 2020 tax levy limit of 17,809,129. We cannot exceed that in our taxation of our citizens. To that, we add the debt exclusions because those obviously were approved above and beyond the levy. We're still working on the library debt, which was a 30-year loan through FDA. That one will be done, as you remember from the debt schedule we were provided a couple meetings ago. That'll be done in 2030. But right now, we're working down at 68,971 for our principal and interest on the library debt. The senior center debt, I am estimating that, obviously, the long-term bonding is to happen in August. We will have our fixed costs at that point, so we know our finalized bond amount when we go out for it. We'll be offsetting the amount we borrow by the premiums we've gotten on the ban, and any premiums we get on that long-term issuance as well. We'll reduce the amount that we borrow. So I based this estimate on the full 5.7 borrowing, and I've used, I believe, a 3 or 4% factor. The 283,000 that I factored into this revenue estimate is based on a 6-month interest payment that we will be responsible for in FY 2020. We're not paying any, we're not liable for any interest principal until August of 2020, which falls into fiscal 2021. So you're only seeing a half a year of interest for the senior center reflected in this year's budget, as well as debt exclusion. This number will wash in the budget, you know, whatever it turns out to be, we get the revenue because it's a debt exclusion, and whatever that works to for the budget will be adjusted as well. Town hall and police station, that's the fixed number. We're in long-term borrowing for that. We have been for the past 2 years, so it's $514,775 for liability, and the amount that we need to raise for the debt exclusion, bringing us to debt exclusion amounts of $867,251 in the sheet, giving us the maximum allowable levy that we can assess on their tax bills to our taxpayers of $18,676,380. At this time, the best numbers that we have from the state are based on the governor's budget. We have done this consistently through the years. It's the best measure that we have, and at this time, it's the only information we have, therefore making it best. But typically, the budgets come out very close to the governor's budget. Oftentimes, they're a little more generous by taking the conservative approach. Again, we're not going to spend what we aren't going to get in the end. Basically, the state, those are the numbers that are allowed. We're allowed to spend in the general fund everything except for school choice. That obviously goes to the schools separately. So that number, although $731,000, you will see it's not in the general fund revenue column. It's not ours to spend. It's the schools to spend. And we go down on all of the different categories that we get money from the state on, bringing us down to $390,957 from the state. We then turn the page over, and then we see they take it away. We have our assessments from the state as well, which they offset what they send to us each month. These as well are estimates. Those will move as the budget goes through the system and what is finally approved by the state for July 1. But these are the governor's estimates for this time, having assessments against us of $419,744. Then the other component is my estimate of local receipts, and that consists of your motor vehicle excise, your other excise, which is our local meals and hotel taxes that we have approved and we receive money for each year, penalties and interest on taxes, and the such. You know, the DCR payment in lieu of taxes that we get for the monies. And also included in my local receipts is the MLP's reimbursement to us for their Worcester County Regional Pension Assessment. We have to include their portion of that assessment in our budget, and they turn around and likewise reimburse us immediately. So therefore, I included in the local receipts, that's a wash. We then are proposing using free cash of $225,000. We historically use 1% of the budget in free cash. So technically, that would give us the ability to use about $256,000 free cash this year. We're pulling it back a bit this year. One of the stated goals in the revenue, in the free cash policy that we passed a few months ago was to try to wean ourselves down off of using the free cash. We're never to exceed the 1%, but we're trying to pull back our reliance on that, therefore giving free cash the ability to do other good things like fund OPEB and capital investments and such as we need to. So I'm proposing that we use $225,000 in free cash this year. Where I am advocating that we use $300,000 from the ambulance receipts, that we, WPPA funds itself from their grant receipts. That's the $550 that you'll see in their budget line coming directly from them. It's a receipts reserve fund. The $18,000 from the Wachusett Trust, another standard item that we do every year. The amounts that we're getting each year in those distributions are declining, slightly, but they're declining, as that trust is wearing down its corpus. what we're earning on it and what we're getting is all climbing. So therefore, I'm going conservative, even though we have roughly about 22,000 sitting in that trust fund. At this point this year, I'm advocating we only take 18, because we might get 18 or 19 in to replenish, so I don't want to burn that dry. CPA, we're estimating revenue this year of 225,000. Pat agreed with me when I put that forward. That number is important because we have to do the allocation to the open space, housing, and Pat, I'm going blank here.
The open space, housing, and historic.
Thank you, the one that we need. Anyway, we always put the money in there. We're required to put 10% into each one of those of our estimated revenues. So that ends up washing out. We can't use that CPA money for anything general fund. So it is put into the revenue estimate, but then it's backed out further down, as you see my numbers. Bringing us to the FY20 general fund spending maximum of $25,427,143. That is the bottom line number that our budget has been balanced to. Further, you will see below that I am backing out the ambulance receipts reserved and the WBPA receipts reserved amounts to arrive at the monies that we were able to base the school's formula revenues on. When we get to the end of the budget, you will see that calculation of how the school's allocation is made. But that 25,071 is the revenue number that we started working away the fixed costs from and ultimately getting down to their 67%. Okay? I backed out the receipts reserved because they are that. Those are receipts reserved for ambulance expenditures and for WVPA. Therefore, to include them in the other number would allow the school 67% of those monies that really they don't have a claim on. It's not theirs, it's reserved.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Is that what we've done in the past, or is this something new?
This is something new.
And have you discussed it with them, the school, so they understand?
No. But
I think we should, if it's,
I got another issue that counteracts that, though.
okay.
My issue that counteracts that, the reverse, is we're backing out $731,000 of school choice receiving tuition, but, and then we're saying that's going directly to the schools. But then we have $420,000 of school choice sending tuition and charter school sending tuition that comes out of the overall budget.
Yeah.
So although we're reserving $350,000 down below,
Yeah.
we've got an offsetting 400 and, what is it? It's an offsetting 350.
Yeah.
It's the same number. So that shouldn't be, the 350 that's reserved for the ambulance stuff shouldn't be there, but if we're gonna exclude the school choice receiving tuition, why are we taking a hit on the government side on the school choice sending?
I would actually have to look into and request that explanation. This was always Mike Daly's model, and up until this very moment, I hadn't thought about
I
that.
haven't either.
I think we both just had a eureka moment that I need to get an answer on, from the state, that asked them if, I am properly backing that out from what the town gets. Because I know when we get the monies in, they do back that out of our Chapter 70 money. They net it out.
When we get
When we get the monthly allotment from the state, on our state aid, they're backing, they net out that school choice assessment.
So if they net out the school choice pay, not school choice in, you're saying? So if we're due $100,000 payment and we have a $10,000 payment out, they're only giving us 90.
Yep, they're giving us the full school choice amount coming in, but against our Chapter 70 money, they're pulling out the assessment. Let me look into that one.
Okay.
I'm gonna call my DOI rep on that one, because that is troubling to me. Where this was Mike Daly's formula, I have faith that this has been properly handled all these years. I don't have my faith in that shaken, but I don't like the fact that I'm not able to explain it to you fully. And I will
It's
get
just
that
something that
answer.
I've looked at this 100 times year over year, and it's the first time I've noticed.
Yep. Yeah, same here, it's like, it just never occurred to me to stop and say, wait a minute, how come?
But I agree with Siobhan that if we are changing the overall way we're handling stuff,
Yep.
we need to.
Now, let me say this about that. It is entirely possible, when Mike Daly was the finance director here, that he did indeed take those amounts out from the school money. I was not involved in that process. I do know in 16 and 17, when I stepped in as the town accountant, Mike Daly was no longer our finance director, that I had included those amounts in there, and I may have done so erroneously. We can't go back and change the past.
Right.
When I realized, oh my God, those are receipts reserved for those purposes, there's no way that can be included in the amount that we.
Always backed out the CPA funds, I know that.
Always did the CPA back out, yep.
I just think going back to common courtesy, just so
Yep.
there's an explanation. My other thing that I don't see is there, anything for when we're sending the kids to the vocational schools for the transportation? Is that a separate line item? Am I just not seeing it?
It's in the school budget, I believe.
Is it?
That's right in their
Okay, so
budget.
it's not a
Both
separate
schools.
line item, because I'm looking at the school choice sending.
It's,
It's not a separate, it's
I
always
know,
been in their
I know the
budget.
transportation is a whole separate thing that comes in.
Okay.
On its own with the school, and they have a revolving fund for that. So,
And the Voc school's always been in their budget, because they wanted to put
Right.
it separately
yeah,
years ago, but then we.
Yeah. yeah, some years it was separately stated, and other years it was.
Okay, I just
Well,
wanted
it's
to, in my
separately
own
stated
head.
in their budget,
In
not
their
in.
budget.
Not in our.
Not-
They wanted to take it out of their budget and put it in.
And, but actually, some years, you're right, we
Yeah.
would have 11 million for
Yep.
schools, 1 million for school choice,
Under the school
Yeah.
budget.
under the
Yeah.
school, under the
And
school
by
budget, within our
separate-
budget.
Right, within
Right, by
it.
separately voting that within town meeting, that put greater restrictions on how they could move money between those two lines. So we've always advocated that for our purposes at town meeting voting, we keep it together. Otherwise, you've got to go through town meeting reappropriations to move that money between the two lines.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all set with your presentation?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Any other questions to Nancy or to?
Well, that's the revenue side, I'm good with the revenue. Well, one other question on the revenue side.
Yep.
I know we're going up 2.5, but I think we actually might have a small amount between the 17,321 that we're starting at. That, so we're not quite at the 2.5, and I'm not saying we need to change this, but the 17,321, 101 property tax from last year,
That was the levy limit.
oh, that was not what we,
That's not what we assessed.
Okay.
That's not what we went with.
okay, so this is assuming we're going to the full levy, we're making up that, I think it was $50,000, it wasn't much. This is picking up that additional amount, okay,
Yep, that's what we're entitled to go with
Mhm.
each year, and the 2.5 is figured on that. Yep.
I thought we didn't use the whole 2.5%.
we, up until this year, have not, there's a little bit left. This budget
We
is
used the whole
is
2.5.
using that, and if this is from memory, I want to say there was about $50,000 of excess levy capacity when we passed last year's budget. But don't
Yeah,
quote
I'm
me
trying
on
to remember what I know we had purposely set aside amounts in excess levy previous to that to pay down the
Yes.
town hall bans and get us to the point where we are, that we have such a low amount left in our debt service on the town hall.
And it was used also to smooth out, instead of seeing a big dip, and then when the first round of borrowing came, a big increase, we used that excess levy capacity to smooth it out, so people didn't see giant changes in their tax bill. You know, tax bill goes down $300 for the year, and then the next year it goes up $600. They're gonna say, what's going on here? Whereas if it's, if it is a smooth transition, it went up a little bit each year, and we paid down a lot of the principal on this building
That's
especially.
saving us a considerable amount. in
I
wages.
don't think, and I know you just used the number for instance, but I don't think it was near 300 that it would have lowered.
Oh, no, I was
Yeah,
just-
right,
I was
just
no,
saying, it
just
wouldn't have
using
been,
a foreign
it would have
system.
been a
Yeah,
very,
yeah, yeah.
it wouldn't, I think we looked at it, it wouldn't have been much for the average taxpayer. So
No.
We leveled it off, so there wouldn't
We
be an
saved a
increase.
lot with minimal impact.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. The FY '20 budget recommendations, do you want to go by category and ask questions in each category? Do you want me to go line by line? This is usually when we just kind of do an overview. Do you want to go into detail? What would you like to do? Want to go look at general government? Do you have any, basically, we have the moderator, there's a 0% increase, Board of Selectmen, 0% increase, town administrator is going up 0.74 increase. And this budget includes a 2% COLA for everybody. It's already factored in. The town accountant has a 5.08 increase. We're anticipating that there's going to be a change in the administrative assistant position in that office, and we're going to need some extra funds for cross-training. The assessors has a small increase of 0.1%. This includes the COLA for the individual working in the office. The treasurer-collector has a decrease. This, in the past years, we had $10,000 for ban issuance costs. However, we don't have any bans anticipated for FY '20, so we could reduce it by that amount. Town council is level funded. Computer has 1.9% decrease. This happened because when we went out to bid, our new IT person came in with a lower bid than we were paying for our consultant that we had, and we were able to reduce that, and this still maintains our capital replacement schedule for all of our computers. Then we go to the town clerk. The town clerk is increased slightly for cost of living allowance. Elections is decreased a little bit because we're expecting reimbursements for extended polling hours. And we're also putting in here, we have some election workers that make $8.25 an hour. For those workers, we want to bump that up to $9 an hour. And we can do that and still decrease the budget.
Nancy, if we're getting reimbursement from the state on extended polling hours, wouldn't that just flow through to the general revenues?
No, it goes right back into the,
This is a revolving fund?
No, we do it as an offset, it's a reimbursement of the expenditure cost. Oh, wait a minute. That one does go to a special, and the amounts are charged to that account as well.
So it is,
does go
it's
to
a special, okay.
Special revenue fund, yes.
but we put it back in there, right.
If it wasn't a special revenue fund, I don't think you can do that. I think,
Right,
yeah,
right.
okay.
Yeah, it is a special revenue fund, so the amounts that we're being, that charged because of those extended polling will be charged to
Got
that
it.
special revenue and it washes.
How can these employees be under minimum wage?
The town is not subject to the minimum wage laws. We're exempt. All municipalities are exempt.
Really?
Yep,
Right.
yep. Yep.
The Conservation Commission was, they increased their fees, but they still need a little bump in what they have because we're waiting for the fee increase to actually go through a year to bump them up a little bit. So we're just going to raise them from $1,500 to $1,800. The planning board, we're going to increase that from a little bit because they have a lot of non-fee generating projects that they're going to do this year. They are amending the zoning bylaws. They're going to be dealing with village zoning. So this will allow them to work on their projects and pay their staff. The ZBA did the same thing. They've also increased their fees, but they need a little more time to have everything catch up. So we're going to give them a little bump of $200. Town Hall is a slight increase. This is going to be because of the consolidated supply line item. It's been that way. It was $12,000 reduced to $8,000. but we're going to pick up the Board of Health, because they also have some funding issues, and we're going to include that, those supplies in that line item. And it also has the cost of living adjustment for the custodian. Public safety building is level funded. Town report is level funded at $800. WBPA TV is funded 0% increase on that. Facilities management is going to be funded at $32,000. Hopefully, our plan to discuss with the interim DPW, to see if he's interested in taking over that position will occur, and we'll be able to fill that void.
So last year's 34,100, that's just going back to,
32.
Free cash. It's either,
so we didn't spend any of that,
No.
we didn't have a facilities manager.
so that just goes to free cash?
Yeah, if it's not reallocated to, as a budget fix item for the departments at the May town meeting, if it's needed, it's a source of monies. Otherwise, it goes to free cash when it's done.
So total general government is down 0.1%. Public safety, under police, this is a 0.5% increase, and this is due because we have a retirement of a sergeant, and we'll fill that void with someone coming in at a step 1, and we also have, we'll be filling the patrolman slot then with someone at a lower rate. So we're able to recognize some savings in that budget. The fire department is an increase of 13.47%. And what we're doing is we're going to add 1 full-time additional staff member. And this is the one that we're applying for the SAFER grant for. If we get the SAFER grant, we are reimbursed 75% for that person. If we don't get the SAFER grant, then we have the funds in there to pay for the position. And we're also including the 2 part-timers for the Saturday coverage. We anticipate that we are losing $43,000 in revenue that we can recoup then from calls that we've been given away to other towns. In the Saturday part-timers will save us $8,850 in overtime. The purchase service line item, as you can see, was reduced, and that's because in October, we went and did a one-time vehicle repair infusion of cash, and they don't need that this year. And the only other thing that went up there were medication costs, software for patient care reports, ambulance billing, and medical supplies, and that line item went up $10,000. Public safety communications, this is the one we thought was going up 20%, and then the number kept changing, and finally, the last time I spoke to the chief in Holden, he was able to get some grants and do some reorganization to cover capital and other things, and it only went up 1.11, actually 1.11. And prior to that, we were having $5,000 increments of increases. The building department is going to be decreasing, and this is because the inspector now works 20 hours a week, and there's a little increase in code books that we have to replace. So that's a 13.04% decrease. Sewer weights and measures is level funded. We contract with the state. Emergency management is increased from $7,500 to $8,000. Animal control is being reduced because the animal control officer does not use the town phone. He uses his own personal phone, so we've gotten rid of that expense. So total public safety expenditures are increasing 3.70%. Education, we are funding that at an increase of 2.98%. It's going from 12,045,167 to 12,403,969. Then we go on to Public Works. Public Works is decreased by 4.62%. There was small decrease in the salaries based on the usage thus far in overtime and in hours. We did put into that budget the new line item for fertilizer. The Parks Commission went out to bid. They have an estimate from a company, and the quote includes the full year of the police station and the new senior center. And we're also putting $2,000 in that budget for Pride Park. They've exhausted all the funds they had in that line item, and that will help them out for updating that park.
So that's an increase of 4.62.
Correct. No, yes, I'm sorry, yes, yes. Snow and ice is remaining as it is. The light plant,
Do you have, off the top of your head, where we stand with snow and ice?
yes, I have the number right here. $165,165.91. But you have to realize that Carrie's been on vacation for 2 weeks. She deposited what she could bring, what she could process, but there's probably a very large stack of bills on her desk.
So, we haven't blown the budget yet, but it's...
But we are going to.
We did. That's, the deficit is the 165.
Oh, the 165 is the deficit?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant, yeah, that's the deficit.
We don't know what is yet to come.
But those take a while, you know,
It does.
even like next week or the week after, you're not gonna know in a couple of weeks what you have, because people are very slow in submitting invoices.
And how does that compare to, I would imagine it's better than the last couple of years with
Last year,
195?
It was
What week?
190, I think, last year.
the entirety of the year.
Yeah, that was the deficit, was
So-
190.
Yeah, probably
So,
worse.
you know, we're hoping we don't exceed 200,000 for deficit, which is relatively low. I mean, the thing that killed us this year wasn't the volume of snow, but all the icing that
Yeah.
we had. The materials
Yep.
are what cost
Salt.
so much.
And the winter's not over yet, even though it's
Yeah,
spring.
Spring,
Hey.
it's officially spring.
I know, but we've gotten hit before the end of March, so.
Do you want me to
Already
make my
guaranteed me.
prediction tonight?
Chris already guaranteed me no more snow.
I
haven't done that
can
yet.
say with some certainty
I
that
was right
by
last year.
the May 20th town meeting, we should know what our deficit is solidly by then.
Thank you.
Street lighting is being reduced by 39.47%. This is the light department, they are phenomenal. This is the result of their LED streetlight replacement program, and we need to really recognize the efforts that they've made. It's really helped out the budget.
I think 5 or 6 years ago, that was probably like $80,000.
Oh, yeah. Trash removal is based on our contract. It's, SWAT continues to work on getting recycling information out there. Next year, we renegotiate our contracts. I'm gonna go to a recycling summit in Framingham next Monday, and hopefully get some good tips on how we can reduce our costs even more. Okay, cemeteries is being increased. This is as a result of the union contract, a 6.6% increase. Total public works are increasing overall by 2.05%.
So just I lost that page here. So the cemetery that's 2 employees, correct? Or 1 employee
Yes.
and 1 part-time employee, or
Well,
2?
It's considered 2 full-time employees, because on the average, he works 32 hours a week, per year. And full-time is 32.
And then there's FT wages?
Full-time.
Full-time.
What I did.
So what's total with salaries?
106, 194, what I did was took the total and broke down for you what's in that total of 106, 494 consists of the full-time regular wages of $60,385, and then building 103 at $8,000. The part-time employee, it's indicated on the part-time, but he's full-time, so that was $36,255. the board, the trustees get $1 apiece a year, such as you gentlemen do, and the cell phone stipend.
No, we don't do it.
Well, you gotta ask me.
Yeah, I'm asking now.
So that, all the numbers,
Back pay.
all the numbers under the 106 is just explaining what it is. It's not adding it up.
It's not
Right.
double, right, it's just, that explains, and I tried to italicize them to try to make it, I didn't want to just put 106 there without explaining to you how we got there.
Right.
Okay, the Board of Health. The Board of Health revenues can no longer support the wages for the staff. They've increased their fees, they did that last year, and they've gone through a full year, but we need to figure out a way that we can help them out this year. So, there have been changes in regulations that have impacted the fees that they can now collect. One of those was they would give the fees for retail nonprofits previously brought in over $2,500, and they can't even charge those fees anymore. So this year, we're going to increase that line item to $9,000, and that will pay for their staff. And we've also gone through all the other line items in the budget to see if we can reduce anything. And one of the things we're going to eliminate is the flu clinic, which was a nice convenience for the employees, but we've decided that, you can drive down Route 12 and get a flu shot at CVS and Walgreens and Walmart. So we're going to eliminate that. So that's $26.25 that we can take out, and we're also going to put them in the consolidated supply line item, and hopefully, we'll see where they're at next year. The Council on Aging, they have a 34.23% increase. A lot of it has to do with just the new operations of the new senior center, and they're also going to get a partial year of the municipal buildings maintenance for building repairs, and covers their staffing and keeps their programs running. The Veteran Service Officer.
Why is purchase services going up from 20 to 34.5 under the?
Because they got the true costs of all the contracts. We had one number that we thought was in there, and then they sent us another number from the engineers, and they said this is really, they recalculated all of their, like the gas use, the electric, they recalculated everything, and then they sent me new numbers.
Chris, also, I believe the FY19 $20,000 is primarily due to the fact that they did not have to pay rent
Right, that's-
for most
okay.
of 19.
So that all falls under purchase services?
Yes, that's purchase service, yeah.
And can I ask on the salary, are they adding to salary? A 16.66, that's one of
No.
the higher.
They're increasing the custodial hours based on,
There'll be 15,
Bigger
like everybody
facility.
else.
Yeah, they definitely.
they need, they need appropriate custodial care of the brand new building.
So that's
they
the
are
difference?
adding hours to that, I don't remember.
But I think the custodian now only works 9 hours a week,
Yeah, it's-
and I think they're going to 15 or 18.
Yeah,
So that's the $10,000 difference?
plus the COLA,
Plus-
50% for the state. I'm sorry, Jim.
Plus, we didn't pay for the custodian, we got reimbursed from.
Correct.
Reimbursed for that,
That's a
right.
whole, it's a whole.
How did that come in last year? How did that come in the budget? Those reimbursements? Where did we see those in last, where did those come in? This year's budget, last year's budget?
We set up a separate special revenue fund to cover the reimbursements from Mr. Negodigian, and then offset those reimbursements with the wage costs. So it wasn't in the budget for last year.
So all the money that's in that fund has been used?
Yeah, it was,
It was a wash, is
it
what
was
you're
a
saying?
wash.
It
He was assessed exactly what we paid each quarter. We sent him a bill, he sends us a check, so it washes out.
And these numbers are based on what we did use, or you're also saying it's increased on?
For FY20, we're looking at the full year for the COA director, and then the increased hours for the custodian. And she has a very, very part-time receptionist
Mhm.
that works for her as well, very part-time. So I think your primary, I'm not sure if Lisa's doing step next year.
Hold on, let me pull it out.
I'm not sure about.
I thought on the building maintenance, it was a $3,000 figure. Did we go up and give everybody 4,000?
Only 99.
Everyone gets 9,900.
Oh, because of nine,
so-
okay. Well, I was thinking half a year. Okay, so you just went,
Historically, given them the police moved into their building, we acknowledged the fact that they might run into some issues that would qualify for that type of an expenditure, but they weren't gonna need the whole 9,900 on a brand new building when a lot of things are just covered under
Right.
warranties and
Yes.
such, so.
There are also step increases in that.
okay.
Yeah, we are
The
paying
biggest
for,
increase is the, which we all understood, was the electric and
Mhm.
gas
Yes.
and.
The other thing to remember about the municipal building maintenance line items, whatever's not used by the department for the appropriate costs and that item goes into the municipal building fund. So every year, that's closed out to that fund, not to free cash.
Either of you know how much is in that now?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
I thought it was
I'm sorry.
under $50,000. There wasn't that much.
Those are 35.
The last time we looked, it was 34 something,
Okay.
yeah.
Would you like me to follow up? on it?
No, that's good enough. I just wanted to see if it was, I wanted an order of magnitude.
You
I don't
wanted to know if it was
exact-
2 or 3 million?
Yeah. I
So
knew
we
it.
could fund the other.
No. Each year, the departments use really very close to, the library always uses their 9,900.
But these newer buildings shouldn't be using.
I would hope not. I would hope not.
But we haven't had an issue besides the library going over. Like, I'm just wondering, is that still
The library
enough?
has been the only department that has received an appropriation from the municipal building fund.
Okay.
And typically, it's when they've had their boiler issues and such.
Right.
The purpose of that fund being set up, we're mid-year, we don't have a way to get an appropriation to handle this building problem.
Right.
And that's what that's for.
Okay.
Okay, the Veteran Services line item is increasing, and we get 75% reimbursement on any benefits that are expended. Our VSO, our gentleman who has been helping us out in that office, is now going to be moving on, and the gentleman who is going to fill that office is going to need some money for trainings, and Doug, who was there before, this gentleman paid for all the cost of his own trainings. He even paid for the software license fees, and that's not going to continue. So we need to increase that. It's a 1.38% increase, and the town will be paying for those costs as they should be. The total human services expenditures is an increase of 18.83%.
On the veteran services, I just want to point out so the board and the public knows, right now, our veteran services are running about 25% below budgeted because there aren't as many veterans that need services. So we're anticipating there's going to be a turn back on that. It's being budgeted at the same amount because you just don't know what's going to happen. But if nothing changes, there is, that line item will have excess funds in it.
Okay, the library. The library's increase is 11.09%. It funds step increases and overtime. This budget also increases the hours of the custodian from 11 to 15 hours a week, which brings that position more in line with the other municipal buildings. We have 15 hours a week here at Town Hall, be 15 at the senior center. They are requesting $3,000 increase in their overtime budget to cover staff meetings and mandatory town trainings and workshops. The library has seen a 22% increase in attendance over the last 4 years. Utility costs have drastically increases for them. Their gas price from FY15 to 16 increased over $2,300 in just that 2-year span. And the library also has, they have to pay the Oddfellows parking lot plowing because the staff is allowed to park there. So they have expenses in their budget that we don't normally have with other town buildings, because everybody else gets their parking lot plowed by town forces, and they have to pay other people to plow this lot, so their employees will have a place to park in the wintertime. And they also get their municipal buildings maintenance line item.
Is there any reason why our DPW can't?
Yeah.
I was
Do
just
that?
gonna ask that.
Well, it's you cannot use public
Oh, 'cause-
funds on private property.
But,
They're allowing the
But-
library folks to park there and out of, good neighbor type agreement, so they share the plowing cost.
Right.
and-
Well, they share it,
They share it, they don't pay
Do we-
for it entirely.
so we don't even know, do we know what that dollar amount is?
I could get that for you.
I am sure I have it in here.
I mean, I bet it's a big portion of that purchase service. I was gonna say, if we're paying it all,
No.
why should we be
No.
plowing the parking lot for them?
It's a portion of it, it's
Yeah.
not the whole thing.
Can't imagine.
So what else will be going in the purchase services, because that's got a good jump.
Gas and electric, you said, gas went up, you said.
Gas one,
They have increase in gas, increase in water and sewer, everybody had that. The utility budget has been underfunded. Their electric costs have gone up $6,000 in a 2-year span. They have their elevator maintenance contracts, those have gone up. New England mechanical contract, all those come out of their purchase services.
The plowing's not broken out.
They didn't put that number in there. They have, no.
Is
Second.
that something you'd like
I'm
to
just,
call?
We can- I can get
I'm
that.
just curious, I don't believe it's gonna be done before
I
either,
don't
but,
think it is, but,
I mean, it's probably gonna be a small portion of that increase. Sounds like it's all the other.
yeah.
What I can do is I can give you a copy of all of this.
No, if that, yeah, that's the
No?
only number I was wondering about. That's
Oh,
all.
okay.
It's just that, I agree, it's a 21,000 increase, so just trying to figure out what makes that one.
Okay, celebrations, that's gonna be per the vote of the board, we're gonna, fund that at $1,700. Total
Memorial Day, do you
Did
remember
someone
what-
donate?
I thought that flag
For
was.
This year.
FY19.
this year he
But for
donated.
FY20 going forward,
Oh,
we
okay.
have to, it was voted at the Board of Selectmen meeting
Yeah.
that evening, that we would fund it in the budget. Part of the cost as well has been built into the veterans supply budget for the flags. So
He's
that,
purchasing them now.
yeah, he's purchasing.
'Cause he can
them
get 'em
and he can
reimbursed.
Get the reimbursement on the flag purchase.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, so.
Okay, debt. Debt principal is decreased 1.24%. Debt interest has increased 46.49%. Short-term borrowing, 4.13 decrease. Total debt service is an increase of 10%. These are fixed costs per the town's debt schedule. Intergovernmental, we have our CMRPC number that we have to spend. That is based on the town's population. That's $1,871. We have our Earth Day. That was level funded from last year at $41.21. We're also committed the $1,000 that goes toward the maintenance of the rail trail. Total intergovernmental increase is 0.66%. Employee benefits, retirements, and pensions are up 11.92. Workers' comp is increasing 6.39%. Then we have unemployment insurance. It is 16.67 increase, and there's notes in your department head reports that, this line also has the trust that they can fall back on if they need extra funds, but we're going to replenish this at town meeting. Unemployment purchase service is a fixed cost, and that's an assessment of $2,700, level funded. Health insurance is level funded. We had a 6% increase, but we have enough cushion in there to potentially add 10 additional bodies to come on the town's health insurance policy, and the recommendation was to keep that level funded. Group life insurance is level funded, another fixed cost. Medicare is another fixed cost, and that is increasing 2.6%. The general insurance is increasing the full cost of 1 year of the senior center, so that's $4,000. And total employee benefit risk management is increasing 2.95%.
I could just make a comment on the group health insurance. Traditionally, we have funded the group health insurance assuming everybody was going to take the health insurance. And it has traditionally been a giant source of, or the main source of free cash that we've had. So I don't have any issue with budgeting this way, but the board and the public has to understand that this, based on the increase, this line item would have gone up $215,000 this year. I still feel we have plenty of money in this line item, but we have to understand that moving forward, that's going to directly reduce the amount of free cash that's going to be available next year. And it's a fundamental change to the way that we're doing this budget. And next year, when we have an increase, we're not just going to be able to not do something about that increase. So if this is a one-time, we don't have to increase this line item to bring this budget item to frankly where it should be. But next year, if we have another 6% increase, it's going up 6%. So as long as everybody understands that, it's how it should be done. But we're gonna be starting at a $200,000. We're gonna have to make up $200,000 next year, assuming the same increase in the next year, meaning not this budget, but the following year budget, because we have an additional $200,000 that is being put in here that's not gonna be there next year.
Are you saying the general insurance is only going up $4,400?
Correct.
And that insures the senior center?
No, that's the full year of the senior center. Last year, we thought we were going to use a half year, but we're not going to use, this year, we're only going in, we had put in $4,000 this year, because we thought we were going to be in January.
Correct.
So now we need another $4,000, because that line item is $8,000.
So it's 8,000 for the year.
Correct,
8,000 for the year.
yes.
And on the health insurance, was that number 10 used as an average over some years, that we said 10 employees in case?
Yeah.
Is that what that?
Yep, I based what we had spent, what we had budgeted, what we had available. And that was assuming that we had 10 folks coming on the Fallon Select plan, our most expensive active employee plan at the family level. So we're going to have potential, you have a number of folks hitting 26 that they're no longer covered under their parents' plan, then they end up picking maybe Fallon Direct individuals. So that's, half of what Fallon Select family costs, type of thing. So it's 10 bodies coming on top, Fallon Select family. So if we have 15 bodies change coverage or whatever, we're most likely going to be safe with that. If not, we'll be talking in October or May.
But you also looked at, over the average,
I have.
we've taken
I have
10
looked at-
on average, or added a few, or is 10 the average?
I don't know that when I looked at it as number of bodies that we were safe adding, as opposed to what has been a safe cushion for us over the years that has served us well. And when I did out the numbers and said, you know what, 10 seems pretty safe. We're talking about adding another, in the fire department, you've got 3 folks who will be benefit eligible, because anybody over 20 hours in a municipal position is benefit eligible. So we're talking about hiring, 2 individuals to cover a Saturday, that's a 24-hour shift. So they're both eligible for benefits. Whether or not they'll take it, that's another story. And you're talking another full-timer again, whether folks take it or they don't, things change, things happen. It's a very, very fluid situation for us.
Okay.
And you may have people who might migrate to the
They
direct.
may go to the less expensive direct plan. Fallon gave us a very attractive premium for that this year, whereas the direct plan does not have deductible, whereas the select plan has $250, $500. The select plan is going up 6%. They kept the price the same for the direct plan, so we're going to, as aggressively and assertively as possible, try to stress the benefits to our employees, to look at the direct plan, that maybe it would work for them. It will save them money, it will save the town money, so we can try to channel folks in that direction. By even making the direct plan last year have no deductible, well, we had no choice but to go up with a minor deductible in the select plan. We did have an increase in interest in enrollment in the direct plan. So now where we have the added benefit that although we were fortunate enough not to have to increase the deductible for the select plan, because $250, $500 is still a very minimal deductible to have. It's still a very, very good situation for us. By being able to keep it still as no deductible on the direct plan and no increase in premium, we're expecting that a number of folks will take a look at that.
Okay.
That's it?
Any other questions in regards to the budget?
Very nice job, everybody.
Okay.
You don't do that every week, do you?
No.
Next item is Winter Town Administrator's Report, town meeting update.
Okay, just want you to know, we have received 2 10 taxpayer petitions for the warrant. The first is to ban all types of adult-use marijuana establishments, which was previously approved by the October 15th town meeting. The second is to change the existing zoning bylaw, which was approved at the same town meeting, and prohibit all types of marijuana establishments in the town's industrial area. Last year at town meeting, we approved use for the uses in the business, industrial, and commercial districts. The moderator is going to be appointing a backup moderator who's going to oversee the overflow room, which will be the cafeteria, and we have arranged to have the cable people set everything up, so hopefully there shouldn't be any issues. But this was sent to town council, and town council sent an email just to caution the town. She notes that the first article, which proposes to ban all types of adult-use marijuana establishments by way of general bylaw, could potentially expose the town to litigation in the event it passes. There are several pending cases in other similar situated communities where a town passed by 2/3 vote a regulatory zoning bylaw that permits marijuana use in certain zoning districts, and subsequent citizen petition efforts to ban such uses by way of general bylaw passed by a majority of vote. In these cases, applicants for marijuana establishments have brought that have already entered into a host community agreement have brought judicial challenges to the general bylaws, that bylaw ban. In a recent case involving the town of Charlton, the land court determined that the later proposed general bylaw ban was not sufficient to overturn the regulatory zoning adopted by the town, and that any future ban would need to be passed as a zoning, not a general bylaw amendment. So when we go to town meeting, we'll certainly have town council point this out to the voters at town meeting so they know everything involved.
Now, that would require a 2/3 vote, would it not?
General bylaw is simple majority, zoning is 2/3.
So one of them is zoning, the second one's zoning?
The,
Second one is zoning.
How come they change the, if it's a zoning issue, how come they change the general bylaw and change the zoning?
the zoning issue is the elimination of the industrial area for the use, marijuana use. Right now, it's industrial, commercial, and business. They want to remove industrial and just have
That's the
commercial and
second one, that's
business.
the zoning. How can the first one be a general bylaw to ban it? Wouldn't we have to change the?
Because it was a general
zoning laws?
bylaw.
Wouldn't we have to if we change the general bylaw, won't the zoning bylaw still say that they're allowed?
We changed the zoning bylaw.
If we change the general,
Mm-hmm.
won't the zoning bylaw still say that they're allowed?
Yes, actually. No, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna ban it all, the general bylaw is gonna ban it,
Everywhere, but we need to change the zoning bylaw to reflect that.
well, we
So-
have two of these.
If the first one passes,
Total
he would
ban.
probably waive the second one. Because all the second one says is he doesn't want it in commercial,
Industrial area.
industrial.
Industrial.
So if he changes just the general bylaw, how does it change the zoning bylaw? I don't know.
So the
That's a good
general
question.
bylaw, total ban. So the zoning, I think, you are right. Maybe, they will
If he
put the
changes
general bylaw.
The zoning bylaw will still say that they're allowed.
No, that's why they are putting, or
Not
the
putting-
zoning bylaw, whatever they are proposing, allowed in the business and commercial area.
Yeah, but
They are trying to prohibit only in the industrial area.
If the first one passes, I'm sure he's gonna waive the second one.
I would think so, I just sent them both to town
But the
council,
zoning
so,
bylaw, I guess, I just ask, how does it, if the first one passes, how does the zoning bylaw change? It'll still say marijuana is allowed.
okay, I'll ask town council.
And the first one is just a majority, simple majority.
Correct, just as we did last time.
Doesn't make any sense.
I think it's also that it's, the people listening should know that it's the same 15 people on both
Correct,
signatures from what I'm seeing.
yes,
And it's in one general area of
Yes.
town that's not happy. It's 15 Emily Drive.
because they abut the industrial area.
Right,
But
so.
they will have to do everything at town meeting. We have no.
They know that.
yeah,
They know they're gonna make the
have to do
motion, they
that.
know they have to do the explanation,
Correct.
yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Last town meeting, we had that warrant article to ban. That one is simple majority, right?
Yes,
Correct,
And then the second one was the zoning bylaw.
correct.
So that one at the 2/3. I think that's how they are going
No,
about
that's
here.
not, because they're only changing the second one, all they're changing is in the
It's not,
industrial area.
it's not totally
So
everywhere.
they have, first one would have to take it out of our zoning bylaws. If it passed, it would still be in our zoning bylaws. So, I don't know the answer, so you can ask town council.
okay. The date has been set for the townwide cleanup. It's gonna be Saturday, April 27th, from 9 until 12. We've had two meetings thus far. Michonne Fowler and Tony Sanders are going to be co-chairing the event. John Schlechte and Norma Chanis are volunteering to work on the committee. We had a very productive meeting last week. T-shirts have been ordered, fundraising letters are going out, and residents are being contacted who participated last year to see if they have an interest this year and if they want to stay with the same area or go to a different area. And the state is encouraging towns to designate Saturday, April 27th, for springtime cleanups. We have registered our event on the state's website, and we'll report our results to them. And that way, if people are looking for a community event to participate in, they can go to that website and see if the town is having something, and it will all be included on there.
When did we have the last cleanup? It seemed like yesterday.
October,
Right. We
October.
haven't had one for probably 10 years, and we've had two within 6 months.
Well,
Does
this
that sound
ties in
different?
with Earth Day. We wanted to bring it back to Earth Day, because when we used to have the cleanups, it was usually Earth Day. So we're going back to the April date to have it coincide with Earth Day.
So I guess when we report our numbers, we should report October's numbers to the state.
Well, I've
So-
already asked for that. I've asked the DPW,
'Cause I
because
would
they
hope
have
we
the
don't pick up as
dumpster.
much rubbish in 6 months than we did
Yeah.
for 10 years of NIPS. So I don't know, it just seems, I know the people, the residents like to help, and there was a great turnout in
Mhm.
October, but now, 6 months later, we're asking them to come out and clean the town again. I mean, and I don't think there's any, I don't want the residents to think that our town's this dirty that every 6 months we have to have a townwide clean.
No, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think we wanted to bring it into an Earth Day celebration, which most towns do, and so that was the plan, to bring it and have it at Earth Day.
Okay.
I
Okay?
would ask that if any of the residents that are listening, if you are gonna volunteer, I know a lot of people signed up and said, oh, I'll clean up my neighborhood. if you're in an area that's all houses, there's no garbage being cleaned up, because everybody picks up most people will pick up the trash from in front of their house. So if you're looking to volunteer, take one of the main streets that don't have that many houses. Woodland, Prospect, sections of, around Goodale Park area, Crescent Street area, where there's not as many houses. That's where the trash piles up, and that's where we need people to pick stuff up, not on some cul-de-sac that you live on, because there's gonna be no trash to begin with, I would assume, in front of your house.
I think we noticed in general, any area that there was houses, there wasn't much
Right.
trash. It was those areas like Woodland and, 110 and 140, those were.
Yeah.
filled
Lee
with
Street.
nips.
Filled with nips,
Filled
exactly.
with nips. Wish we could have counted just those.
Is there a rain date?
No,
Only one day?
one day.
I think it
Rain or shine?
Rain or shine.
Rain last
It
October.
rained October, I think.
Ooh, that was brutal.
Yeah, it was awful.
The next item is the Malden Street Bridge closure. We've received notification. It's anticipated that on April 15th, the project will begin, and they anticipate it being completed by June 18th. The police chief has notified all residents who live past the 1000 Goodale Street house, so they're all aware of what's going on. At our last meeting, we discussed the CMRPC traffic counts. The chief recommends that we request counts on Prospect Street on both sides of Woodland, the Woodland intersection. Transportation Committee did not offer any suggestions, so I will send the chief's recommendation on to CMRPC. And just a side note, I was contacted by the gentleman who, on the Complete Streets project, we have the Crescent Street sidewalk project. That was being engineered, and I'm going to meet next week with the gentleman from Malone and McBroom. Those are the engineers who are putting together the plan, so they also are putting together the project for the Lee Street drainage issue that we have, and we'll meet next week and hopefully get everything started.
And what was the street that we wanted to count? Was that one of the ones that?
Thought you said you wanted Prospect Street.
Prospect.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
one that. Okay, any questions? No. Meetings limitations, Saturday, March 23rd. This week, the West Boylston Town Hall, on behalf of the friends and family of Andrea Levine, you are welcome to join us at the All Hearts for Andrea CPR clinic presented by West Boylston Fire EMTs. Training time slots are 8 to 10, 10 to noon, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. To register, call 777-450-3523. Is all this information on the town's website?
I believe it is, and just to let you know, the only slot that has openings is the 2 to 4.
Okay, so disregard those other two, 2 to 4 is available. Or you can email
2 to 4.
cfiske@westboylstonfire.org to pick that 2 to 4 spot. This clinic is free and open to the public. Refreshments will be served. The Levine family would like to pay special recognition to the West Boylston class of 1996 for their support. Okay, thank you. Monday, March 25th will be the day Elder Service recognized March for Meals, the awareness for senior hunger and isolation. Representative O'Day will be going along with the Director of Elder Service to deliver meals on wheels for about 4 of our clients in West Boylston. They have extended the invitation to Board of Selectmen if one would like to come along. That's on March 25th. And then March 21st through the 30th, Friends of the Library Book Sale, March 21st, 5 to 8 is Friends Night. Check the website, so go on the website for more details. Next, announce the town will be receiving $290,967 in Chapter 90 money for fiscal year 2020. Future agenda items and selectmen's reports.
I I'd like to sometime in the future have a discussion about town council and maybe going out to bid.
We can put that maybe
Sometime after the
after town meeting.
town meeting, yeah.
Anything else? Just, I guess the only thing I'd have is, in regards to, our financial policies that we have in place, do we have anything about OPEB in our financial policy now?
I believe we did pass an OPEB policy, yeah.
Did it say that we should be funding it, or did it just say that we're gonna open the account? Because we made the goal if it was just to open the account.
Yeah, no, it recognizes that we need to fund it, and we outlined a number of strategies to fund it by allocating percentages and stuff, and I apologize, it's been several months since I've looked at the policy, since we constructed it and passed it, but one of the strategies that I think, we need to make a contribution each year, I think, no matter how small, I think it will matter, it will help, according to our ability to pay. And we make that a priority for us, but definitely when our pension assessment is caught up for the unfunded liability there, we definitely need to channel that money there, and that is in the OPEB policy,
So it's in
because
the
it will
policy.
likely happen well after all of our times, so if we're talking 2035.
Is that, he said 2035, is that the date?
I believe that is for Worcester Regional's target. Of course, I believe that the state allows up to 2040, and whether they meet that target will obviously depend on the performance of the investments. And how much we're assessed obviously depends on the performance of the assessments as well. But I believe Worcester Regional is invested in the firm, and it's a very, very good performer. So hopefully we're on track for that. But definitely, Nancy, have the financial policy, the updated ones, made it onto the website?
No, that was something the intern was supposed to do, and he's still working on that.
Okay.
And I have 2 policies that Anita sent to me that I still have to get back to, I
Yeah,
guess,
we need
get them
to-
back to you or back to you?
Back to the meeting.
Okay.
We need to.
It's not gonna happen before April 15th.
But yeah, there were a couple additional policies that for some reason they got left out of the slew that we did, pass and everything. So they'll be picked up as well.
Okay. Any other items? And a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you.
I have a Outlook reminder. Comes up every morning.